What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Tron Ares, a movie where, in spite of seeing it under ideal circumstances on the best screen in New York at the AMC Lincoln Square with Ares himself, Jared Leto, in attendance, it still managed to be one of the most mind-numbingly boring and sleep-inducing movies that I've seen all year. And I took a nap ahead of time, I consumed some caffeine, I was ready. But no matter how expensive the visuals might be, and no matter how much I might have tapped my foot to the pulse-pounding score provided by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, this is a movie without a pulse, this is a movie without a soul, or put more bluntly, this is a movie without a script. Disney spent so much money on this movie, but never at any point throughout the entire running time of the movie does it feel like anybody invested any time or attention into making us care for what might be the blandest and most generic cast of characters in any big-budget movie all year. And as the old expression goes, if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage. And what this movie reminded me of was building a giant, beautiful, expensive skyscraper, but without a blueprint, and it slowly but surely just starts to crumble and fall to pieces right before your eyes. And there's some actors and some movie stars out there where they can kind of bluff their way through a movie in the absence of a good script. Like if you bring in Scarlett Johansson and The Rock and a couple other like big charismatic movie stars, they can just kind of fake it and make you believe maybe it's something resembling a coherent story. But Jared Leto has this style where he just kind of delivers every line in this kind of soft-spoken voice. It's actually the exact same tone of voice that he used in the post-credit stinger for Morbius, not a movie that anybody wants to have their movie compared to. And Greta Lee, she's a very talented actress, but she's not a movie star, or at least not a movie star yet. And there's times in the movie where it just seems like she's totally lost and bewildered as to what she's supposed to be saying or doing or why any of it makes any sense. Like, she can't fake it or bluff it. Like Jared Leto, he's a pro, he's a veteran. Greta Lee's like, what do you want me to say? Like, this is idiotic. And so I feel nothing but pity for her. I hope she was incredibly well paid. But who are the filmmakers responsible for this abomination? The screenplay was written by Jesse Waguto, if I'm saying that correctly, and it was directed by Joachim Roning. And the only movie by him that I'm familiar with is Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. Not a movie that I would include amongst my top 10 favorite movies from that decade, but that is the guy that Disney recruited for this movie. And the story's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Here's the synopsis from Wikipedia. Tron Ares follows Ares, an advanced program sent from the digital realm into the physical world on a perilous mission, marking humanity's first contact with artificial intelligence beings. But another key subplot, as revealed in the trailers, that Evan Peters' character, Julian Dillinger, the CEO of Dillinger Systems, he wants to try to find a way to bring all these artificial creations into the real world and turn them into weapons.
I would like you to meet Ares, the ultimate soldier.
But there's a problem where they basically just kind of fall to pieces after a certain number of minutes. So the whole movie's about all these artificial creatures as well as human beings trying to find this missing code that might potentially allow the creatures from within the grid to live in the real world indefinitely, which leads them on a bit of a kind of an Easter egg hunt or a wild goose chase, looking for the great Jeff Bridges, aka Kevin Flynn, the former CEO of Incom. And he's obviously been the heart and soul of this franchise going all the way back to 1982.
Hey, it's the big master control program everybody's been talking about.
I'd like to go against you and see what you will make.
And I won't say that this movie relies upon nostalgia bait, because there's really only a little bit of nostalgia bait in the movie. But in that, a lot of the actors from the original film as well as the 2010 film Tron Legacy are still alive. I was a little surprised that Olivia Wilde and Garrett Hedlund weren't featured front and center in this movie, especially since a lot of people out there still remember Tron Legacy very fondly. But the biggest surprise was that Bruce Boxleitner, Tron himself, was not in the movie. He's still alive. I mean, the franchise is called fucking Tron. Like, maybe consider including Tron in the movie. But in their place, we have Jodie Turner-Smith as Athena, who's basically just like the big bad villain of the movie for Ares to fight periodically. And we have Gillian Anderson as Elizabeth Dillinger, the mother to the character played by Evan Peters. But in the end, it doesn't really matter who's in the movie because there's no story there. There's no meat on the bone for the actors to kind of sink their teeth into. You have the occasional kind of like pretty light show, and then you have the occasional dope tune. Like, admittedly, I was thumping the fuck out of my foot throughout most of the movie. The music's great, but great music when it's kind of uncoupled from a story with a beating heart. Ultimately, it's like, I mean, it might make a fun soundtrack to listen to, but you need the music and the story and the performances all to be kind of woven together into a greater whole. But let's be honest, while the music of Nine Inch Nails, aka Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, is absolutely incredible in movies like The Social Network, the original theme music to Tron from back in 1982, that still works just fine for me. You know, like da na na da na 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 na. I can't remember how the rest of it goes, but it's a very hummable theme. And when the movie first plays, like you immediately get sucked into the world of Tron. And it also helps that I was 6 years old when Tron came out, and I spent basically like a year playing the stand-up arcade game. And either I just totally sucked at it, or the game was really fucking hard, because I never made any progress. But in spite of the fact that I completely, totally sucked at the game, I did get to experience most of it, because it either randomized which games you played within it, or it allowed you to pick kind of which games within the game you wanted to compete with. In any case, the stand-up arcade game absolutely rocked, and so that theme song just bouncing around in my head for fucking months on end. But I rewatched Tron a couple nights ago, and I was absolutely spellbound by just like the sheer beauty of the movie. The story's always been a little bit basic and a little bit clunky for me, but there's no denying the fact that if you basically look at Pong in 1972 and where video games were at that time, and I think it was a few years later where the director of Tron was inspired by Pong, but the fact that you could have like in a 10-year interim between Pong and Tron, such a, just like a seismic leap forward, where quite literally technology was evolving at the speed of light, where it seemed like the future really would have no limits. So how have we gone backwards so much in the 43-year interim since Tron? Because there's not a single scene in all of Tron Ares that can compare to any of the great shots in Tron. But in spite of the technical limitations of computer-generated imagery in 1982, the movie just has so much style. It has such a specific look where you're just like intoxicated by the beauty of the movie, and that's why people keep coming back to Tron, every couple of decades basically. And Joseph Kosinski, while I don't think Tron Legacy represented as seismic a leap forward as the original movie, it was still a very enjoyable movie, and it was still a very watchable movie, and obviously that would lead to bigger and better things. I mean, Joseph Kosinski now is one of the biggest directors in the business, with movies like Top Gun Maverick and this summer's F1 the movie. And it also helped that Olivia Wilde played one of the sexiest characters in the history of science fiction. And speaking of Tron Legacy, my first summer at San Diego Comic-Con was the summer that they were leading up to Tron Legacy, and people were just going crazy anticipating that movie. But one of my earliest experiences with kind of the fandom of Tron, I was just walking down the street to the convention center and saw this mob of people sprinting along the street. And one kind of heavyset guy was slowly but surely falling behind. And I was like, what's going on? Like, where's the fire? Like, what are y'all running from, or what are y'all running toward? And he goes, they're giving away Tron stuff, but I can't make it. And he just kind of gave up and sagged against the side of a building. I was like, holy crap, this guy wasn't even alive when Tron came out, but he's got so much dedication and loyalty. So there are people out there who just absolutely love what Tron represents. And there were people in the theater tonight that were clapping and applauding and laughing. But I should say this. I've never seen a crowd at the AMC Lincoln Square on the big IMAX screen that was so pitiful on its opening night as tonight. Like, it doesn't matter what the movie is, that place sells out. When I saw Smashing Machine, when I saw Sinners, when I saw One Battle After Another, that place sells out. It might drop off afterwards, but it's the best IMAX screen in New York and one of the best IMAX screens in the country. And people they quite literally line up for days in order to get into that screening room. But I walked in tonight and I was like, where is everybody? And I thought maybe they were like kind of come in late to do the trailers or whatever. It was like half full. So I think the audience for Tron, while it remains passionate, it is shrinking, and this movie's so boring and so drab and just such an unexceptional experience and such an unremarkable experience. I have a feeling that it's going to contract the appeal of Tron moving forward. But another big problem for the screening is that it was an IMAX 3D, not just pure IMAX. And these IMAX 3D glasses are completely, totally insufferable. It basically takes what is like the biggest, most beautiful, like crystal clear image imaginable, and it turns the whole experience into kind of like a claustrophobic, confining one, where over time you start to develop little headaches where you take the glasses off, like, wow, like it's so big and so open, and it's such a pleasure to look upon that giant screen, but of course it's blurry, so you can't do it. So you put these ones on, and your whole world like shrinks down. And another problem is with a movie like Tron Ares, which has a lot of bright and shiny lights in it. Anytime there are bright and shiny lights, you can see your own eyes and your own nose and the reflection of the glasses. Like right now, due to these lamps on either side, I can see my own eyes. So probably 300 or 400 times over the course of the running time, I would see myself looking back at myself. That's distracting. It takes you out of the kind of the immersion of the overall experience. And the whole reason you see a movie in IMAX is for the immersion, for the beauty of the image. So yeah, IMAX 3D, thumbs down. I know James Cameron's been trying to make IMAX 3D for a long time. All I need is a beautiful IMAX and or 70 millimeter experience, and I'm just an absolute movie watching heaven. Even if the movie is kind of limp and lifeless, I can still just enjoy the sheer raw spectacle. But these glasses, I think, are a major obstacle. They get between the audience and the movie, as opposed to allowing the audience and the movie to kind of, get like sucked into each other, like a character in Tron going into the grid. And ordinarily, after seeing a lackluster Disney movie or show, it would prompt a really, angry, passionate tirade on my part about how Disney's ruining this or Disney's ruining that, because obviously they've ruined Indiana Jones, they've ruined Star Wars, they've ruined Marvel, they've ruined Alien, they've ruined a lot of things, or at least are in the process of ruining. But Tron is homegrown. So this is not like the property of another production company or another studio where Disney went out and like gobbled up that entity and then tried to make it their own or kind of repurpose it. Tron was a Disney movie back in 1982. So was Tron Legacy, and so is Tron Ares. So I'm not going to go off on one of those shrieking rants about how Disney corrupts and destroys everything they touch, because Tron is one of the few things in their library that was homegrown, developed from within. But they're doing themselves no service. If you're lucky enough to have a concept as original and as eye-popping and as beloved and well-regarded as Tron, put your best foot forward. Don't hire some random Joe Schmo director. Hire a true visionary, somebody who does forward-thinking, as the filmmakers were back in 1982. And there's nothing forward-thinking about this movie whatsoever. It's just a series of kind of bland chase scenes and bland action scenes. And throughout the entire movie, they keep explaining to us how these are like the ultimate super soldiers, and they can just kick all kinds of ass, and like watch out for Ares, he's gonna fuck you up. There's not a single good fight scene the entire movie, and even when the artificial creations are in the real world and on those fancy scooters with the beams behind them blasting along, at one point they're chasing Greta Lee on her little moped, and they can't catch her. Or when they get up beside her, they kind of don't know what to do to stop her. It's like, y'all are supposed to be the baddest motherfuckers in all of human creation. Surely you can stop a lone woman on a motor scooter, and yet she just somehow manages to elude them. I would describe the chase scenes and the fight scenes in this movie as uneventful. And I'm not going to overstate the case and say oh, it's the worst fucking movie ever. Like, Disney's made plenty of terrible movies in the past. I'm sure they'll make plenty of terrible movies in the future. This movie's just kind of humdrum, is routine, it's bland, and judging by the size of the audience tonight, I think it's going to bomb and bomb hard. But Disney has no one but themselves to blame at this point, because they've got to get back into the business of developing original material, or at a minimum, acquiring cool books and trying to adapt them for the screen. Because for the last 5 to 10 years, all they've done is try to extend franchises decades beyond their natural lifespan. Think about this. Tron's 43 years old. Seeing a sequel to Tron in 2025, take me back to 1982 when I was 6 years old. Imagine if somebody said, hey, we're going to go see a sequel to a movie that came out in 1939. We're going to see the sequel to Gone with the Wind. Or we're going to see the sequel to Wizard of Oz. And, age 6, I'd be like, what? What's 1939 and what are you talking about? I want to see something new, something exciting. And luckily in 1982, it was one of those, basically one of those watershed years where we just got so many incredible original science fiction movies, whether you're talking about E.T. or The Thing. Actually, The Thing was a remake. Blade Runner, which was an adaptation of a short story. What else came out this summer? Wrath of Khan, obviously the sequel to Star Trek the Motion Picture. There was Conan the Barbarian, that's fantasy, not sci-fi. Oh, and obviously Poltergeist was a big part of that, which was basically shot right down the street from E.T. at the exact same time. In any case, 1982 was a crazy year for science fiction, and Tron was right at the heart of that, where it just seemed like anything was possible. Disney needs to get back into the business of trying to make us feel like anything is possible. Apparently, when they were making Tron, and there's a great documentary on YouTube where it's a 90-minute documentary, it traces the entire development and production of and distribution of the movie, but they were constantly asking themselves, what would Walt do? And obviously that spirit of innovation, which Walt Disney embodied in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, that's something that the filmmakers behind Tron tried to recapture every step of the way. But getting back to Tron Ares, there's nothing about it that feels like it has a spirit of adventure or spirit of discovery or just a sense of trying to stimulate your imagination and open your mind to all sorts of incredible storytelling possibilities. Instead, you have this enormous cast of characters, many of which could have been kind of folded into each other because a lot of them are serving the exact same purpose, like a room full of 3 or 4 people of like wisecracking technicians. Well, maybe you only need one wisecracking technician because 3 or 4 is one too many, and it just makes the dialogue insufferable. But when you watch a movie like Tron Ares, it's like there's not a single risk. There's not a single bold storytelling choice. There's not a single moment where you're like, all right, this is what movies are all about. Like I said, it's just got a pretty light show. And here's what's crazy. This is a very mild spoiler. So if you don't want any spoilers of any kind, bail out now. But there is some nostalgia bait or some fan service toward the end of the movie where very briefly they go into the kind of like the simulation of the grid of Tron from 1982, where it looks like Tron from 1982. And yet it doesn't. Like Tron in 1982 looks better than the 2025 version where they're trying to recapture that aesthetic where like the glowing doesn't quite work, the black background doesn't quite work, nothing about it quite looks the same. And they even revisit a few famous locations from the movie, like the little hole in the wall that Jeff Bridges left. And I was like, God damn, like what has been lost? What has been forgotten? How come 43 years later you can't recreate like what seems so special and so magical about the visual style of Tron back in the day? So sadly, this is just going to be yet another one of those disappointing misfires by Disney. And in 2025, they've had several disappointing misfires, but they just keep ignoring the fundamental building blocks of what makes a great movie. You need a great script, like a great blueprint, a great like roadmap for everybody to get on board with. You need a visionary director, and I acknowledge, visionary directors do not grow on trees. Disney can afford them. When Disney is spending, I'm seeing here, $180 million on the movie, yes, you can afford to find a visionary, even if you have to wait until they become available in their busy schedule. Because you've got a great cast here, which they want to make a great movie. They want to do great work. But if you don't have great storytellers to guide them, well, then the actors are kind of totally lost and there's nothing they can really do. And I don't think Disney will ever kind of crack the code or figure out how to make good movies again. What they'll probably end up doing is just waiting for a cool company to emerge that's doing something like that feels Disney adjacent, and they'll just acquire it, like Pixar. Pixar originally was not part of Disney. Pixar was off on their own in the 1990s, and Disney started distributing their movies and eventually acquired them. Or Marvel, or Star Wars, or whatever the case might be. I don't think Disney's got the structure within their organization to kind of develop heartwarming, memorable stories, but they definitely have the pocketbook where they can buy those stories, but they just need executives who actually have that desire to go out and do so. So we shall see. Maybe Zootopia 2 will be a hit. Maybe, what they got, the Avatar 3. I think the Avatar 3 trailer looks like pure ass, but I'm sure it'll make $2 billion. But if it doesn't make $2 billion, that'll be further evidence that something's wrong at Disney. And I'm about to say something that I know some people will find controversial. I think Predator Badlands has a very good chance of sucking as well. I know people who are going crazy today, fighting tooth and nail, defending that movie. I think it has all the warning signs of being yet another disappointing Disney misfire. But if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to admit it in a few weeks' time after I see Predator Badlands. But I think at this point, I've raked Disney over the coals enough. I've tried to remove my venom from my fangs for this review and just be a little bit more cool and objective. But if you're excited for Tron Ares, obviously, rush out and see it, form your own opinion. Don't let me spoil your fun. But if you really want to have like a great Tron experience, just watch Tron or play the original stand-up arcade game or watch Tron Legacy. But yeah, Tron Ares is by far the weakest chapter in the overall Tron saga since in the last 43 years since this franchise got started. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, hitting the notification bell, and I'll be back at y'all later this week. I'm seeing Is This Thing On at the New York Film Festival Friday morning, and I'm seeing the reboot or remake of Deathstalker Friday night. So I'll be reviewing one or both or whatever later on this week. But thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.